Hello, good evening, and welcome to Varsity Maine Live. This is a show where we hit on all topics Maine high school sports. Thank you for joining us. I'm Travis Lazarczyk for the Portland Press Herald. Tonight, I'm joined by my colleague Steve Craig, also of the Press Herald, and Adam Robinson of the Lewiston Sun Journal. Our guest tonight has been the Yarmouth High School boys soccer coach for 25 seasons. He has won 10 state titles at Yarmouth, plus one at Deering before that. He's got more than 300 career wins. His team in 2019 was ranked first in New England and eighth in the nation. Joining us tonight, Mike Hagerty. Mike, thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
We'll start just your team right now, 9-0-1. Just tell us about what's making this team click right now this year.
Well, poor coaching to start. We should be 10-0 for sure. We have a fabulous group of seniors who are just committed to being great teammates and playing unselfishly and playing hard. And so we've really, I think, started to ramp up and play as well as we can play the past few games. But it's funny that whole talk about undefeated and stuff, that's also not really our focus. We just want to play as well as we can. And as my college coach taught me years ago, if you just be your best, the winning and losing will take care of itself. And with this group, especially with our seniors, that certainly has been the case so far.
Hey, Mike, we had a chance to chat a little bit before the show started. What's your feeling about opening up the schedule so Yarmouth and other teams could play teams outside of their classification?
Well, I've probably been a bit of a thorn on the MPA side, or certainly a nag. I wish we could open up the schedule outside of conferences and play more regionally and maybe create more games that are more competitive. As you've all seen from the scores this year, there are far too many 7, 8, 9, 10, nothing. I mean, there's never a reason to score double digits, by the way, in a game anyway. You should never score 10 goals on an opponent. That's bad form. But we shouldn't have those matchups. I mean, if we go outside of conferences, I think we can create, regional competitive games. I would love to go play Portland, Deering, Chevers, Falmouth, Scarborough, which are all within 12, 15 miles, and to create a competitive schedule as opposed to going to some schools that might be an hour away that are less competitive games where they don't enjoy hosting us. And it ends up, you can leave there with pretty hard feelings if you win 7-0 and you spend the last 20 minutes playing keep away. So I would love to see us create cross-conference, cross-class schedules.
Yeah, Mount Abrams coach Darren Allen has been talking about this, and I've talked to him about it over the season because you're right, there's a lot of large score deficits. I wanted to ask you, Mike, you played Freeport early in the year, and you said you won 4-0, but you said, I still think we can get a lot better. And you haven't lost yet, but then Freeport tied you. Do you think that how's your team progressed throughout this year to this point?
It's funny. The game that we tied Freeport, we played a first half that was better than either of the halves we played when we beat them 4-0. Yeah. And sometimes that's the inconsistency of high school sports or any sports. I think in the second half, the game got a little choppy. It got a little bit long ball. It got a little bit out of our comfort zone. And it just, as can happen in soccer, things didn't go well. But the first half that we played in that tie game was, again, better than games we had played. The game we played where we beat Freeport handily. They were also missing their best player in the midfield. They also had a kid coming back from injury. They were not at 100% in that first game. That was a little misleading. But I think the way we played recently, against Grand New Gloucester and against Cape, yesterday was we're starting to move the ball. Soccer's funny. There's a lot of other stats besides goal scored. There's possession. There's connected passes. There's corner kicks. There's territorial stuff where you can break down a game. And I think we've been better at that in the second half of the season. And I think even though the scores might not be vastly different, the style and the feel of the game, I think we're starting to peak.
Glad you mentioned like those other stats and kind of the things that go on in a game. Like defensively, you guys have been outstanding this year. Just 2 goals allowed in 10 games. That's something that's not always easy to quantify. Just tell us what's kind of the key to that defensive effort right now for you guys.
Well, yeah, I think that goes back to our seniors. We've got some kids who are committed to playing wherever we need them to play, kind of game to game, matchup to matchup. And the kids take a lot of pride in that. The other piece is we have some pretty talented offensive kids. And, we joke a lot about when we have the ball, the other team can't score. So I know that sounds oversimplified. However, it's true. Right. So we do work a lot on possession, even with our backs. And I think the game has changed drastically, at least in my 25 years in Maine, where the level of play overall has improved. So you can go to a good game and you don't see as many, just booming 30, 40, 50-yard kicks. You see a lot more focus on keeping the ball on the ground, a lot more focus on maintaining possession. More and more teams are comfortable playing the ball back to their backs or even back to the goalie in order to maintain possession, as opposed to force something that's not there. So I think our ability to keep possession also helps our defense. It also makes the game a little more predictable. The stuff where you see in your midfielders look back and forth and the game gets a little dizzy, though bad things can happen. Funny bounces, handballs in the box, bad penalties. I think if the game's predictable, it's a little easier to defend.
Interesting. Hey, one thing I wanted to talk about is it certainly has to do with Yarmouth boys soccer, but it's not so much about soccer. Jared Conan, a Yarmouth senior who has Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, has been such an integral part of your team for really, as you mentioned to me, since fifth grade?
Yes, for 8 years
and he's now a senior. And what you've done to help Jared is tremendous. But I'm a little curious, what has Jared done to help your team? And what's the value, do you think, for finding room for kids with physical or mental challenges in high school sports?
I think it's a must. I don't think we do it enough. We always joke about life's a team sport, right? And one of the things, the most important thing I think we can learn from sports is to be great teammates, no matter what team you're on. And Jared, absolutely is one of the best teammates we've ever had. He cannot play physically, but he's found ways to contribute to the game. He does help with stats. He also is our, culture captain. He was voted captain by his peers. So that was not a coach named position. He earned that with the way he interacts, and he's very, very inclusive. And, one of our mantras is work hard and don't complain. And we have a kid who has gone from a fifth grader being able to run around a little bit to now fully wheelchair bound and has never complained. I've known him for 8 years and I've never heard him complain. In fact, when I'm around him and I complain, I feel guilty. So right. This kid has been dealt a pretty hard hand in life, and he has been nothing but a consummate role model and great teammate. And again, I want to emphasize his teammates voted him as one of the captains. That was not a coach appointed position. And that just shows what his peers think about him. And, and again, he's found ways to be a great teammate, and he's found ways to have an impact on others, not just being a role model, but also being a leader. And that's been pretty exciting to see that. I think it's a great lesson for all of us, no matter what our physical or our mental handicaps. If we focus a lot more on what we can do and not on we can't, I think this world would be an even better place than it is.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, Mike, I want to thank you for giving him a platform, and thank your players for electing him captain. I was just looking at a memory that showed up on my Facebook today of Jonathan Shoemaker of Levitt a couple of years ago, who is a cross country and a track athlete who's also in a wheelchair, and his fight to be able to go into the regional and state meets and compete just like everyone else. And I just think I also work with special needs kids during the day, so I just think it's really great that they're being shown and that their teammates think so highly of them, because with Shoemaker they were making signs and they cheer so hard for him, and it seems like it's the same with your player here. Yeah,
and good for you for doing that work. It's much needed. We're not inclusive enough. We really aren't.
Here's an awkward segue now, Mike. Who are some of the other contenders you see in Class B? I hate doing it, but
well, it's funny. We've got our schedule now. We have to go scout Erskine and Gardner, who we haven't seen play yet this year, who are up in the rankings. And Gardner just had a big win recently with Erskine. But Cape is as good a team as we played. They're dangerous. They've got some very good athletes, and they're better the second time. We just played them, and they were much better the second time than they were the first. Cape is good. Freeport can beat anyone on a given night. But then, look, York just came up and upset them. and they'd handled York pretty easily the first game, and York came back. York's a very young team. I think their coach would tell you they're probably a year or two away, and they come up and beat Freeport. But, Greeley, Cape, Freeport, us can beat one another on any given night, and we have to go find out about Erskine and Gardner in Class B. Class A, I think, is equally wide open. Those are fun games to watch and see the scores. Wyndham one night beats Falmouth, and the next night gets upset. And I think two dark horses in Class A, people should not sleep on Gorham. I know they had a rough start to the season. They're very good. They're very deep. They're very athletic. And the same with Deering High School. Those are two of my underdogs in Class A, and South Portland sneaking in with some big wins. I know we always talk about Falmouth and Scarborough, and deservedly so. And Wyndham has had a great run. I think Class A is also wide open. So A and B, I think, are going to be really fun tournaments. I think we'll see they'll look like upsets on paper, but I think if you really talk to the coaches, there are some teams that will be seeded lower that really are much better than their seeds.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd agree. I was just glancing at the standings, more so in Class A before we came on the air, and easily you could say there could be 6 teams that could win in the South, and then that's leaving out a really decent Marshwood team and Portland, which is now 6-4 after some early struggles, and then Gorham. We're going to highlight 2 of their athletes of the week later. They got beat by South Portland last night. Right. After beating Wyndham. So it's exactly what Mike Hagerty is saying. It should be a great tournament, totally unpredictable.
Brunswick, and up north, Brunswick just tied Lewiston. And you can't sleep on Brunswick. They've got some players. And Camden Hills is another young team. We play them every preseason.
Who's beaten Brunswick, and their only loss was season opener to Lewiston.
And they're young. They have hardly any seniors. Camden's going to be a team, not just for surprising teams this year, but for the next 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. Camden is going to be a really, I think, one of the favorites in Class A. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Take that one to the bank.
What's that?
Yeah. I said take that to the bank if Mike Hagerty says it.
But again, I think we can beat any of them at any given night. So we just would love to have the opportunity to play them in a regular season game. Our school might be small, but I feel like we've got a pretty good thing going.
Yeah, I live right down the road from Lewiston High School, and I was waiting for someone to bring them up, but it is right to bring up that Brunswick just tied them. I didn't see that game. I read Eli's story on it, but I've watched them play a couple times, and they seem like they could beat anybody, but then run into Brunswick and anything can happen. So I do wish you guys could go play them and they'd play other teams more often.
Right. We get to play them in the summer, but summer games are funny. Yeah. And Lewiston has so many players. They split their team in half in the summertime. So it's really not an accurate, but yeah, I love the story up there, what Mike had done prior to his retiring, and the coach's name now is escaping me, but they've continued, and I've followed Bilal as he's gone on to play collegiately and be successful. And, I'm a big fan of soccer in Maine, and I love to see Maine kids go on and be successful, no matter what program they come from. The soccer world in Maine is so small that there are some fierce rivalries on the field, but everyone's really pulling for each other when we get away from the field. And I think supporting the growth of the game in Maine. And I've been around again for a little bit, and the game has certainly improved just tremendously in the past 2 or 3 decades. And the numbers show that, with the kids going on to play collegiately and the youth numbers improving. And I'm really excited about the level the game is at right now.
Good. That's probably a great place to end this segment. Mike Hagerty, thanks for joining us, and good luck the rest of the season.
Sure thing. Thank you for having me, and thank you for giving soccer a spotlight. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You're welcome, Mike. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Okay. All right. We are going to move on now to Athletes of the Week, as Steve alluded to a few seconds ago, starting with Ruth White of Orono Cross Country. She's a sophomore. She won the Festival of Champions at the Troy Howard Middle School in Belfast with a record-breaking time of 17 minutes, 28.46 seconds. That time set both a meet and course record. Kellen Addix of Lincoln Academy Golf, he shot a 73 at Natanis to win the KVAC B title. This weekend, he'll be competing at the state championships, actually tomorrow at Natanis, where he'll be one of the favorites in Class B on the boys' side. I'll be at that championship meet, and I'm looking forward to seeing guys like Kellen and, of course, Ruby Haylock from Levitt to see how she does to defend her title. Field hockey, Autumn Freeman of Mountain Valley in 3 games, all wins for Mountain Valley. She racked up 8 goals and 3 assists in games in which Mountain Valley beat Telstar, Halldale, and Boothway Wiscasset. Eli Soren of Oxford Hills football, junior quarterback, completed 15 of 23 passes for 262 yards, and he ran 4 times for 73 yards, including a 52-yard touchdown run in a win over Edward Little. He also intercepted a pass and made all 7 of his PAT attempts. Adam, what doesn't Eli do for that Oxford Hills team?
I don't know. There's really not much that he doesn't do. He did have an interception against Edward Little, and I watched him get an interception against Sanford. He just sits back there at safety and makes plays. At quarterback, he can make all the throws. He's built. He's like 6'2", 200, 210. He'll run over you if he needs to. He can pull it down and run, or he'll have designed runs. But Mark Soren, his coach, just kind of leaves all that up to him. And if he sees a lane, he'll go run, or he'll go throw it 40 yards down the field to Tegan Pelletier, who's like 6'5" and can make every catch. So their offense is really high powered, and they've been a real joy to watch. And that win against Bonnie Eagle, I think it was 19-6. I think that kind of proved that they belong in that, Thornton, Bonnie Eagle, Scarborough class of area of Class A at the top.
Yeah,
if you were an odds maker, okay. If you were an odds maker, not this week, but next week,
right?
Thornton Academy travels to Oxford Hills. Who's going to win that game, or what would the odds be? I don't know anything about odds, but
yeah, I'd probably put Thornton at like minus 160, 170. They're a pretty good favorite. I felt a lot better about Oxford Hills' chances coming off of that Bonnie Eagle win, but then the next week Thornton beat Bangor. And they scored, I think, 83 points, Steve, right? Something.
I forget. I could barely keep track. I think it was 83-14.
Yeah, I felt
63
a lot better
in the first half.
Yeah, I felt a lot better about their chances before that game, and you can speak on.
It was actually 84 because they ended up getting the equivalent of every extra point as well.
Oh, right. Okay.
For all
and
12
that's also
touchdowns.
Something that Eli does is he doesn't miss point after attempts. So
that's key. That can be the difference between wins and losses. Okay, sorry, Travis.
That's all right. Please don't bet on high school games. It's unbecoming.
That's probably illegal.
It's probably illegal.
There's probably some bar in Portland where you can find that line.
Let's not go there. Okay. But Skowhegan Field Hockey, Lainey LeBlanc, she scored 2 goals and had 2 assists in a 5-0 win over Brunswick. In Halldale Girls Soccer, Marie Benoit, she scored all 3 goals in a 3-2 come-from-behind win over Monmouth to help the Bulldogs stay undefeated. Gorham Boys Soccer, Josiah Irish and Cole Bishop. Bishop's a junior. He scored 2 minutes in the game thanks to an assist from Irish. 2 minutes later, they reversed it with Irish, a senior, scoring to propel the Rams to a 4-0 win on Saturday at Wyndham. It was the first loss for the Eagles, who have only allowed 2 goals in 7 straight wins. Gorham's now 5-3-1 after starting the season 0-3, Steve. What's been about the Rams' resurgence?
Well, it's Mike Hagerty, and he knows better than me, already said. They're a very deep team with a lot of veterans. But now they're 5-4-1 because they lost to South Portland since I wrote that thing that you just read. But so it just goes to show that league really, A South is going to be just a battle, and it should be really fun. And kind of looking ahead, Scarborough boys, who are the lone unbeaten team now, they're 9-0. They've got they should go to 10-0 for sure. And I forget exactly, but they play Falmouth next Wednesday, and then they have a game with Gorham. So that maybe will give us some insight into are they that little bit superior to the rest of the league?
Yeah, seasons is rapidly coming to a close. The regular season, I should say.
Yes.
Gabby Chessie from Oak Hill Girls Soccer. She scored 3 goals in a win over Carabec on Thursday and 3 more against Spruce Mountain on Saturday. These hat tricks followed a 2-goal performance against Buckfield on Tuesday. So get the ball on her foot, and she's going to put it in the net. Caden McDuffie from Cape Elizabeth Football. He's a senior quarterback, and in the Capers' 35-14 win over unbeaten New York, he threw for 163 yards and 3 first-half touchdowns. He ran for another 164 yards in the score. Cape is now 4-0, entering this week's Class C showdown at Levitt, which I am sure we will talk about very soon. And finally, Taylor Torrey of Chevrolet Field Hockey. She scored 3 goals and an assist in a 4-0 win over Noble, and then she had 2 goals in a 4-0 win over Thornton Academy. We have Varsity Maine polls. You can see these on the varsitymaine.com website. They are voted on by sports writers from around the state and the Maine Today media family. Let's get to boys soccer first. Number 1, Scarborough with all six first place votes, followed by Lewiston. Coach Hagerty's Yarmouth team moves up a spot to 3rd. Brunswick is now 4th, and Wyndham is 5th. Steve, you kind of mentioned already that Class A South is going to be in constant flux here for the next week or two.
I think so. Let's pose it. Okay, Adam, you're the Lewiston guy. Are we missing Lewiston? Should they be really number 1 instead of Scarborough?
Well, again, I felt better right before a result. I know Brunswick's a really tough team, but Lewiston, I asked Dan Gish, the coach, how this team compares to, the last 6 years of teams, and they've had some state titles and some really talented players, and he said this one is the most unselfish of the teams, and that's true. They have a junior named Shafi Ibrahim who could, I think, go play D1 just like Bilal Hersey did. They have Bilal's little brother, Khalid Hersey, and they usually score a whole lot of goals, but Brunswick was able to hold them to a 1-1 draw. But I think they can hang with just about anybody else in Class A based on what I've seen and how I've seen them play.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at this point you have to just respect Lewiston, and no disrespect. I keep voting them number 2 at this point, but
no, it's fair. You've seen the other teams, and they the top of Class A South has to beat up on each other, and A North is a little bit more separated.
Yeah, although I do feel like it does feel like it's, certainly at least with Brunswick and Camden Hills, they have a real challenger, which I don't seem to. It didn't feel like they had that in maybe like 2017 through 19 or something like that. And then Bangor, is they're maybe the X factor. And Edward Little's pretty good too, right?
Edward Little, they played them really tough. Lewiston scored 2 goals right before the first half ended to kind of separate themselves, but it was going right back and forth throughout the whole game outside of those 2 goals. So they play them tough. Lewiston does have a lot of competition in A North in their own right.
In girls soccer, Scarborough remains number 1 with 5 first place votes. Wyndham now number 2 after being number 3 last week. They pick up a first place vote. Bangor 3, Cape Elizabeth drops to 4th, and Brunswick is 5th. I was looking to see when Scarborough and Wyndham would have this great matchup, 2 undefeated teams, and they don't play each other in the regular season this year, which is just a quirk of the schedule. So I guess we'll have to wait for the playoffs for that one.
Yep, same on the boys' side.
Yeah. Field hockey, Skowhegan remains number 1 with 5 first place votes. Chevrolet is 2 with 1 first place vote. And then we have Scarborough, York moving into the top 5, and then Lawrence, who remains the class of Class B North. Then moving on quickly to football, Thornton Academy still getting all 7 first place votes. Number 2, Oxford Hills, followed by Portland, coming off a big win over Marshwood, and then Bonnie Eagle and Wyndham round that out. Seems like Class A, Steve, will sort itself out next week a little bit when Thornton and Oxford Hills play.
Yeah, excited to make my first trip to South Paris in I don't know how long. So
come join the party.
That should be fun. I have been there, but not for a high school football game. Maybe never, to be totally honest. And I was talking about it with Mark Soren today. It was nice of him to tell me that the field's not at the high school, so at least I'll find it.
Not far from the high school though, so
right down the road.
I probably shouldn't admit that I've never been there, but there it is. It's out there.
Okay, that's all right. Oxford Hills shows out for games. The community comes and supports, and Thornton will come and support too. It's probably the game of the year, or one of. But I'm
this week's game of the year. Yeah,
that's true. That probably is true. But I'm thrilled for it. I'm really excited for next week.
No, and you know what? It's excellent. Bangor kind of maybe isn't quite there yet, but the more teams that get competitive in these leagues, the better. And we're seeing that in B South as well. I mean, I'm sure some people are like, I shouldn't have Portland in B South, but you know what? It's better. It makes that league deeper. And it just makes it. And Noble is that team that nobody's paying any attention to. I'm looking forward to seeing them play South Portland. They're 4-1. They have like the bet. Maybe they have one of the better scoring defenses in the state, and they gave Portland as good a game as Marshwood and Kennebunk. So, it'll be fun to see is Noble. At this point, somebody's there. I think South Portland is certainly going to take them for, as a real quality opponent. So it'll be interesting to see if Noble can, on their home field, take care of business.
Okay. Other games of this week, like I said earlier, I'm going to be covering the Class B Golf State Championship tomorrow at Natanis. looking forward to not only seeing like Kellen Addix and Ruby Haylock, Eli Spalding from Freeport's another great player, and see if Freeport can remain state champions again. Adam, tell us about the big Cape Elizabeth Levitt football game. This is the second straight week that Cape's got to face an undefeated opponent.
Oh, yeah. I'm thrilled for this one as well. It's at home. Levitt had a couple really big games that were supposed to start their season. They were supposed to start with MCI, a rematch of the 2019 Class C state title game, but they've waited till now for a really, really big game against Cape. Cape can throw the ball, can run the ball. Steve, you can probably speak to that a little bit better, but Levitt has just a massive offensive and defensive line. I have a story coming out today about Jack Boutot, who was on that 2019 offensive line and has only gotten better. And then they have really two quarterbacks. I mean, Hunter Hayes came in and there was a lot of hype around him. He's the senior quarterback. He didn't play the last two games because of a leg injury. I'm not sure if he's going to be back, but if it's the sophomore Noah Carpenter, who's going to take his spot next year anyways, he's done the job. And their offense is explosive, a lot of really fast skill position guys, and their defense hasn't given up any points. They just only gave up 6 on a punt return in their last game, and that's been it in 3 games. So they're strong all around, and Cape knows it. I talked to their coach yesterday, but they're both really, really excited for this one. And talk about fan support. Levitt's going to be packed tomorrow. It'll be really fun to be there.
Okay, Steve, any games you're looking forward to in the coming days?
Just actually getting out to go see a football game would be nice.
Yes.
Since much of this last week, do we want to go down the hazing road?
Sure, take us down
before
the
we
hazing
sign
road.
off.
The Brunswick hazing situation. You've been covering that very well for us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess what I would say first off is that I do feel that the administration at Brunswick has taken it extremely seriously, as they should in any situation where hazing has been alleged. I think the disconnect perhaps for some people is that they don't understand that what hazing is, quite frankly, and that it is demeaning, that it is meant to intimidate and sort of control and humiliate, and whether the victim acts as if they are doing it willingly really doesn't matter when it comes to this, because they're doing it to try to be included. That's the whole point. That's why it's hazing and not bullying. It's been interesting to look at the comments. I don't know 100% what happened. We know what was alleged now, which is pretty graphic for anybody who's read the Press Herald stories. And I don't see how you can say if that was really truly what happened, and certainly the actions that have been taken would indicate that was. I don't know how you could possibly make an excuse for that behavior.
There is none. I think the Brunswick superintendent and everyone involved has done the right thing by dismissing Coach Dan Cooper and kicking guys off the team and ending the season, really.
Yeah, and I probably the one thing I wish was that they sort of used the crutch, if you will, of saying that they were ending the season because of a limited number of players. Well, they had played the game last Friday at Skowhegan under those same circumstances. I think truly they ended the season because they needed to send that message that this isn't, and to say that there were only 5 or 6 or how many ever that participated, there were probably a lot more kids that witnessed it and went along with it and didn't speak up until basically their hand was forced. So
right,
that you're complicit in that way.
Awful situation all around.
Yeah, the only thing that could come out, and Adam, please follow up, is that this may cause people to take a more proactive stance when it comes to teaching about hazing and making sure coaches and players are very aware of what it is, what constitutes inappropriate behavior, and what the consequences would be ahead of time.
Yeah, Steve, thanks for your reporting and your comments here. I just wanted to make a connection that Mount Blue was supposed to play Brunswick this week, and the AD Chad Stoll got to not Chad Stoll. I forgot the name's Chad avoiding Bradford. Me, but regardless, Mount Blue gets to play Old Town tomorrow instead and found an opponent at the last minute. It's been kind of cool to see different teams when they're in this position have been able to find opponents, and teams have been willing to play teams they might otherwise not play. So I thought that was a cool thing that happened, just to kind of tie into the whole situation.
We're all certainly kind of going through another uncharted, learn as we go kind of season.
Right.
All right, that's going to do it for us tonight. We went a little long, so appreciate you sticking with us. Remember, you can get onto the Varsity Maine newsletter by going to pressherald.com/newsletter. You can get all the information on high school sports throughout the state through that. Thanks for joining us. For Steve, for Adam, for Coach Hagerty, I'm Travis. Thanks for being here on Varsity Maine Live.